welcome. You are listening to another episode of the Business of Aesthetics podcast series, brought to you by our gold sponsors, MRP, Laser Up Tech, and Equa Marketing. We also want to thank our silver sponsors, Lendiola, Eilis Works, and Pronox. If you would like to network and share your experience with our podcast guests and other aesthetic industry professionals, join our Facebook or LinkedIn communities by searching for Business of Aesthetics. Today we're going to be speaking with one of the finest experts in aesthetics.
Here's an opportunity for you. Learn 5 marketing steps to grow profits in your aesthetic practice and elevate patient attraction and retention. Join us on September 13th, 2023, 8 p.m. Eastern Time or 5 p.m. Pacific Time for an exclusive webinar by Aesthetics Institute and Business of Aesthetics Community. Don't miss out. Register now for game-changing strategies. Check out www.businessofaesthetics.org homepage for more details.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Business of Aesthetics podcast show. This is Naren, your co-host. Today, we are bringing you the second episode of Success Stories in Aesthetics. As many of you know, I'm also the co-founder of Business of Aesthetics Community and the CEO and founder of Equa Marketing. I'm glad to have Michael back with us. Many of you wrote back to us and said, I really am interested in this mastermind. Tell me more. And many of you actually signed up for the waiting list and even have filled out the application form. So thank you for all of that. Michael, welcome back. Once again, for those who are listening to Michael for the first time, Michael has 25 years of experience leading businesses achieve sustainable levels of success and growth. And Michael also focuses on fulfillment, right? Are you happy? Helping leaders find that happiness. Because, if work is a drudgery, then who wants to get up in the morning and give their all, right? Especially as leaders. So Michael, I'm so glad you're back. Your episode was one of the most listened to episodes we have ever done. So thank you for your insights, your knowledge, and what you're doing with mastermindforaesthetics.com.
It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you, Naren. I'm glad to hear that. I think it's just that comment you made about leadership. I said, you remind me of a story. I was speaking to I'm actually a professional mediator, and a lot of my experience has come out of mediations and some pretty crazy things over the years. But I was speaking to a group of lawyers, and we were just talking about it was actually an advanced mediation training, and I was just talking about I was kind of the provoker, you might say. Mm-hmm. And I asked these lawyers, I just said quickly a question. I said, I'm just curious. Before I get started, I'm just curious, what are you guys passionate about? And there's 60, 70 lawyers in the room and dead silence. I said, I'm really asking the question. And one lawyer, who was actually fairly well known, pushed his chair back, put his arms up behind his head and said, well, Michael, I don't think that question is relevant for us. I said, really? Really? I said, there was never a time where you wanted to create a legal system that was recognized around the world for fairness, for equity, for equality, that you were setting benchmark standards for fairness on a global platform. And this other lawyer, who actually happened to be from China, she said, well, Mr. Mike, she said, we did, but we lost that. Where'd it go? I said, well, that's what I'm here for today, is to help you find that again. And I think that's the challenge that we have a lot of times, that we get into business and our passion is something it's not measurable. It's not, you won't find an entry on your balance sheet for passion, but it's the fundamental strength of an organization. There's all kinds of structures and systems we need to do, but if we don't have our passion fully engaged and the team's passion engaged for themselves as well as with the common direction with the organization, then we get to that place where stuff just starts to go south and we start to have challenges, and we go home at night, we don't feel good about ourselves, how we handled ourselves or others. And I think, to me, my passion is all about helping people be the best version of themselves and really getting back to the core of who they are and why they matter.
Thank you, Michael. Absolutely. I totally, totally resonate with that. And I think um, successful business is like a marathon, right? It's not like a 1 year journey. It's not a 2 year journey. It can be decades long. If you don't have that passion and you're just going through motions, I mean, what's the point, right? I mean, like you hate what you're about to do when you wake up in the morning. Your team probably hates it because they can that lack of passion, seeps through. I mean, what's the point? Might as well, quit, right? But I know some people feel like we are trapped and we have to do it and so forth, or the mortgage, etc., etc. But that's not a life worth living. That's not something that that you want to jump out of bed to. So today's topic, I modified it a bit, Michael, because I think it's only relevant. It's about passion and planning for aesthetic practice success. Passion and planning for aesthetic practice success. So I want to talk both about that, because I feel like it's the left and the right, the yin and the yang. Like you need passion, but you also need to be able to, convert that into plan and actions that you you do something with. The last episode we talked about goal setting. So this is also effective decision making in aesthetic practice leadership. So as part of that, we talked about goal setting as part of effective decision making. So let's start with that. So before I get into passion, I'm going to kind of ask you a couple of questions about planning. So you alluded to in the last session, Michael, this concept of SMART goals. I know many of our listeners probably are familiar with it, but can you kind of expand on what is it and how do you see aesthetic practices actually using it to their benefit?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Aaron. Let me just, before and most people are familiar with them, but we're going to look at them with a slightly different perspective. But let me just something you said there is really important. I said, is that if we think about what we're passionate about, that it's going to be connected to what our vision, our values are. It's going to be that thing that just, as you say, gets us up in the morning. But once we have a passion, then we have to translate that into purpose. And once we have translated that once we have a purpose for that passion, so in strategic planning and business thinking, we talk about that if you will, that the passion is the vision, the purpose is the mission. So the passion is who we are and why we matter. The vision, the mission is what we do and how we do it. And then we have to plan. And that planning is really, again, we need to plan and we just sort of jump into plan, kind of like we talked about last time with decision making. We kind of get the horse in front of the cart. And strategic planning, we talk about, we love that term because it makes it sound very proper and efficient. But strategic planning, if you reverse engineer that, if it hasn't got clarity of purpose, if the mission doesn't make sense to the organization, the people, and it can move according to the direction of the wind every day, then the company looks the same way. And if there's no passion to anchor it, then really, why are you in business? But that's not the case in your cases. But what's happened often is we get so focused on that strategic planning side of what we have to do. And I just want to, when I think about planning and we think about SMART goals, what that stands for, SMART is an acronym, SMART. S stands for specific, M stands for measurable, A stands for achievable, R stands for relevant, and T stands for time bound. And that, if you think about each of those things, they're very, okay, so what a specific goal. So we don't keep them, we talked in the last session about people making decisions and then not being able to follow through with them, usually because they're not specific. It's the first thing. Is if not specific enough, they're too broad. I'm going to change the world. Well, that might be a little big. We want to pull it down a little bit. That's specific, really something that's specific, but specific enough, not just to make it so finite that it has no room to move, but specific enough that people can see a point of engagement with it. See, we don't think about that part. We don't think about the people engagement. We think about the process engagement. Now we think, well, measurable. Well, isn't that the challenge? A goal that's measurable, how many widgets you make, and we're going to make 10,000 widgets, and we measure that, and that's important. But I want you to think about measurable beyond just the transactional of what we do and how we do and how many we make, but how our people were empowered by what we did, and the success stories that come out of. I don't have to tell any of you about the letters you've received from patients that have said, how you've affected their life, changed their life with this treatment or that treatment. That's a measurable goal. If that we set the goal to do that, to provide that kind of quality care for somebody, and they give that to, but we often just look at that as a nice compliment as opposed to a measurement of success. And achievable, that again, going back, it has to be done. The thing with goals is we tend to think of goals beyond a year. The mission is beyond a year, but the goals should really 12 months, a season, or whatever that looks like. But they need to have, they have to be, you have to have a short enough lifespan of them that they can actually, people can celebrate the wins of them and enjoy it in the journey. You know, and that really is a challenge. One of the things most organizations lose sight of as part of the planning mechanism is casting vision. Like in a business, in any organization, in your organization, vision leaks every 30 days. If you're not casting it every 30 days, then it's not there. It's not active. It's not part of the passion of the organization. The idea of having a SMART goal, having a specific, measurable, achievable goal that people can say, this is part of what we do. I can get behind this. And we make that part of the measurement system. The relevant is again, relevant is really, some people say, well, what's the point of having that? Well, because sometimes we set goals that are driven by emotions. We have a goal that's really not a goal. It's just probably trying to deal with something off balance sheet, trying to deal with something we don't want to deal with, or deflect something. And we'll just do that. I can name a couple of big companies that I've watched them do that, but I won't get into that. But relevant is it relevant to what? Is it relevant to the vision of who we are and what we matter? And is it relevant to the mission of what we do and how we do it? And can we celebrate the wins of it from both directions? And then the last is time bound. As I was saying, again, goals should be under 12 months. Action steps it can be any period of time, from one day to several months. It's about, the action step is about, not about the length of time. It's about making it something that you can actually say, we've moved the yardsticks. Let's recognize that. Let's celebrate that. Let's move forward. So to me, this whole idea of SMART goal setting is very much in the business world is set around the transactional side of an organization, what we do and how we do it, which is important and critical. I'm a huge advocate for bringing in the relational space as well, which is who we are and why we matter, and having SMART goals comprehensively address both dimensions. And as I mentioned in the last session, when those two spaces of your organization are working well, when they're integrated and collaborative, the creative capacity of your organization goes through the roof.
Thank you, Michael. This is amazing. Let's kind of switch gears. I know we call this, we're focusing on passion and planning for this particular conversation. I know all of us, like that example, the story you started this conversation with about those lawyers, and you asked them about, what are you passionate about? And we said, maybe that doesn't apply to us. But I bet I can't think of a single person who owns an aesthetic practice who doesn't start without having a vision and a passion as to why they're doing it. And they're super excited and they get into it. They give it their all, right? But then things don't go the way they want. Life happens, challenges, etc., 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 and that passion slowly slips away. How is your mastermind going to address that? I mean, can you talk about how? I mean, I know you've done this, many times with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people before. So I know you know a thing or two that I perhaps don't, and maybe our listeners don't. So talk about it, because I think the assumption we make, and this is something that I learned reading a book called Tiny Habits. The assumption we make is the problem with us human beings is we are not motivated enough. That's why we don't lose that weight. That's why we are not disciplined, etc. But that's not it. It's just that we don't have the mechanism, the structure to keep that habit, keep that good habit. Therefore, we go back to square one. We go back to same old. So everyone starts with passion, but then a lot of people, I mean, you mentioned the statistic, right? 66% of the people are quitting employees, right? We are not engaged anymore. We are not passionate anymore. So how is the mastermind going to bring that back?
Well, that is, you're into the secret sauce. The interesting, you used the word habit, and we we are creatures of habit. There's a saying that goes like that, as I recall. Habit is an interesting word. Habit, if you stop and think about habit, habit is very much transactional. I want
Mm.
to I want to change my habit. I want to stop smoking. I don't want to eat sugar after 10 or whatever it might be. We create these habits, and then when they fall short, we have a particular at the end of every year, we have a particularly special time of the year where we all celebrate these great grandiose change of habits, and we just expect that if we put it in our head, it'll work.
Yes. Yes.
And it's like, and I always make the saying, if you have an assembly line and every fourth car coming off the assembly line is missing its right front fender, your system is perfectly designed to achieve the results you get. No matter all the pointing at that and yelling and screaming, it's not going to change. We do the same thing with these. We're just going to change. Habits are going to change. Well, the problem isn't so much the change, and we're not going to get in. We could talk about change and transition and the difference between that, and it's a huge shift and difference. And most organizations just look at change as a noun, as a thing we have to do, but transition as a verb, and really the fundamental structure of how to actually 70% of change fails in organizations, and it's because it's focused on change. But this idea, though, of going the habit, if you're just trying to use head knowledge to change a habit, then if we're sitting here talking there and I say, I get you all excited about changing this habit. I get you just so excited, want to go and motivate you till the cows come home and you're just ready to go. And as soon as you walk out of your office there, that's it. I'm never going to eat another chocolate bar again. And then your phone goes off, and then your dog pees on the floor, and then whatever happens, that motivation goes right out the window, and
Yes.
along with the habit. Because why? Because it never got beyond the head.
Mm.
Here's the secret sauce. See, passion is not head knowledge, it's heart knowledge.
Mm.
Passion is anchored in the heart. It's the true self, the true value that you have for yourself and for others that you want to give away. And when you can actually move from that place from a passion to a heart, it's not about motivating anymore. It's about inspiring. And inspiring, actually, it's an interesting word, inspire, because we don't think of it really. We think of it very shallow, but it's actually a root. It's in spiros, but it's actually an infusion. It's a filling, and that's what we get to give away. But when that fills us, then that's what we have to keep. When I talk about vision leaking every 30 days, it's that inspiration, it's that passion, that heart. But we as leaders, if we don't have that, then how can we possibly how can we give it away? And so we often operate at this habit level, at this mission goal level, and then at a head level. And then when stuff goes off the rails, we just try and rally everybody together and have a great speech until the next problem, and then have another great speech. But we never translate that into a relational capital of the passion of why we do what we do, and move it to a heart place where people are inspired. Yeah, we've got problems, but we're also not walking away from it. We've got challenge, we got new opportunities. And I think that's when I look at this idea of the best example one of my favorite stories is if you think of Dell computers.
Mm-hmm.
Dell computers, they're in the business of what? Selling computers.
Yes.
You go online, it tell you want to buy a computer, you want this amount of space, all the hard drive, all that kind of stuff. You buy a computer. That's their business. And so their whole thing is really more like it's like a habit. I need a computer so I can do this, and I could do this. But let's think about this though from the perspective of Apple. Apple actually sells arguably a lifestyle. They sell a culture that didn't exist until they created it. What they sell is the why. They sell not the what. Do you need a computer? The why. Do you want to be part of something that's going to be revolutionary and change the world? Oh, and by the way, we sell computers.
Mm.
And I think it's that paradigm shift. And this all comes back to the why. It all comes back to this piece. The secret sauce, I say, is who you are and why you matter is equally important in an organization as what you do and how you do it. Yet most organizations do not treat those two areas even remotely close to similar. Lots of us put signs on the wall and say how much we value our people, but nothing follows. Now that was a long-winded answer.
Thank you, Michael. So you're telling me this is the secret sauce. This is why the mastermind is going to be amazing. Of course, there's lots of other pieces to the puzzle, but this idea of reigniting the passion. And I do think when you have a group of people who all want to not only be successful, but also enjoy what they do, jump out of bed in the morning. I think that's a great group to hang out with, right? I mean, it's just um, it's inspiring. I mean, we live in a world where there's so much of negative news, and this is wrong and that is wrong, and we feel we are helpless. And so, at least in your tiny world, right, your team, your patients, your family, hopefully, you know, you can now start changing what that bring that why back, bring that passion back, where you jump out of bed and the people around you jump out of bed. You look forward to that team, meeting. You look forward to meeting that, person who has been in your team for the last 3 years, because it's just, you're going to do magic. You're going to have fun. You're going to enjoy yourself. You're going to make a difference, all the why stuff. So thank you for that, Michael.
And Aaron, if I could you bring out to bring balance to that comment. I appreciate that. It's important. This isn't about just not thinking systemically or strategically at all. I'm being very strategic. But what it is about thinking about those systems and strategies from a different perspective. And I think it's about, I have a saying, I call it's about, and another part of secret sauce of mastermind is discovering how to actually engage and actually execute unconditional curiosity.
Mm.
And it kind of looks like curiosity that without opinion, expectation, and judgment, starting with yourself. And the whole idea that there's all these opportunities that could be there, but we have all these preconditioned thinking process. Guess what? These head-based habits that lock us into something that's less than our best. And that's why we want to take those locks off. And the cool thing too with the mastermind is that it's not me trying to do anything to you. Hopefully I operate with unconditional curiosity, and I'm an excellent facilitator of concepts and ideas. But what is exciting is the other participants are all equally, and suddenly there's this feed that's going on back and forth that is just so powerful that when I mentioned in my first session, I talked about best practices. Most of us were thinking about best practices from a business transactional perspective. Well, this is best practices from a people perspective that transforms yourself and your whole team.
Absolutely, Michael. I think that's a great, great, great comment. I do appreciate you adding that color to our conversation. Let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about emotional intelligence. What role does emotional intelligence play in long-term success?
Well, it's interesting. As a professional mediator and a leadership coach, and I've been working with emotional intelligence. We actually we moved away from the concept of just purely emotional intelligence. We focus on, and we do in Mastermind, we talk about emotional wisdom. And what emotional wisdom is the art of relationships that includes emotional intelligence, which is the science of people. So we kind of
Can you repeat that? Can you repeat that, please?
Sure. So if we think of what we talk about is emotional wisdom, which is the art of relationships that draws on emotional intelligence, which is the science of people. And we bring those two places together. And it's that emotional wisdom. I've been doing this for a long time. And I'm always amazed that when I've talked to somebody who's been recruiting people for coaching jobs, so I asked them, have they done any personality profile work, any conflict management styles, appreciate different things. And most of all, yeah, I remember I did something on personalities, but it was a long time ago, but it was a color or something or a letter. But very few people actually have ever brought it into who they are and why they matter. And the craziest thing is that, if I I was thinking about this as a manager, I can manage a process if I have a manual.
Mm-hmm.
I got the book. It would be handy as parents if we had a book, but I can lead a process with people if I have the manual, and at least I can manage the people that are like me, which is about no more than 17% of the world. So that's right there is where the problem starts. Because if you don't know anything about emotional intelligence, you haven't spent any time really understanding how to meet people where they're at and then to meet you, then you're only you set only 17% of the time are you likely to be successful in leading those people. And then we get on to influential leadership, but I just bring that point up because emotional wisdom really is how do we understand the science of our uniqueness and our preferences in a way that we can meet each other where we're at, have conversations that you remember I mentioned this idea of the creative space, or sorry, the transactional space and the relational space. When those two spaces are working really well together, there's a high level of emotional wisdom in an organization because they can actually address healthy conflict, which is passionately disagreeing without taking it personally. They have mechanisms for resolving unhealthy conflict. They can actually go to question. They don't just have safe answers, they have courageous answers. They have questions that allow them to open up. They have ideas that can be off the table. But the whole premise of that is that they have spent time investing in themselves to know themselves better. We're gonna in Mastermind, we're gonna dig into that. We're gonna look at we look at our personality types, not just the idea of what it is, but then how to actually apply it to know that how personalities go through change, how they deal with conflict, looking at our conflict management styles. I don't know, some people may hear, no, maybe a lot will, that we each have our own appreciation language. Funny story, I was working with there was a couple in an audience I was speaking at, and we had just done these appreciation languages, which is really how we receive appreciation. And they're looking at each other really strange. I said, "What? I'm just curious. You guys are looking kind of odd at each other." He says, "Well, yeah, we've been married 28 years, and now I understand what he appreciates." You know, he's always about words of affirmation, and she was always about acts of service, and they were just constantly in conflict. Well, that happens in every organization. There's this is not rocket science. This is very simple stuff. But when you have it in your toolbox, can I just tell you that the benefit of this is massive? You can actually turn an HR department into a profit center. This whole idea, though, where you have a self-help conflict management system where people can deal with their own conflict as practice owners, as managers, how often are you or what your HR person in the middle of something that you really don't need to be in if there was a system in play to do it? Well, that's where emotional intelligence comes into play, emotional wisdom, where we actually start to be able to meet people where they're at and then to meet us where we're at and have mechanisms, again, systems that allow us to understand how we all interact. We actually do an onboarding practice with companies where we actually take and everybody coming into an organization will do their personality type, they'll do their appreciation language, they'll do the conflict management style, they'll do their learning style, and the results will be shared with the people that they're going to be reporting to, and the person that they're reporting to's report will go back to the new person. So right out of the gate, you have an emotional wisdom level that you would never have had if that hadn't been done. Right out of the gate, you have a mechanism for dealing with conflict between each other without having to go to mom and dad to somebody else to have it resolved. So to me, emotional intelligence is probably the most underrated practice of organizations with the greatest potential for not only personal satisfaction, but financial gain.
Thank you so much, Michael. I have a couple of questions from our listeners. So my first question is, how can aesthetic professionals, let's say practice owners, right? Say, I'm just, this person didn't tell us a lot about, the particular individual, but I just want to provide some context. Let's say somebody has been running a practice for 6 years, $1.5 million practice, with a small team, less than 10 people. So the question is, how can practice owners align their practice's purpose with their financial ambitions? So this yin and yang, this balancing act, right? Why you do it, why is everyone jumping out of bed and coming to work, not just you, but your team, but then also making it worthwhile, making this year better than last year. Of course, all this in the context of all the challenges we face, right? Employees quiet quitting, turnover, expenses are going up. There's a lot of uncertainty around us.
Yeah, I think what's important there is when we look at the financial side of an organization, and if I actually pull, I'm gonna do something again. This is something a little different here. I want to introduce a word. I want to introduce the word prosperity. We tend to think about business success. We're successful when we hit our numbers, when we make more money. We're successful when we get X number of treatments or whatever we're doing, whatever we benchmark in that. And that's important. Obviously, if we don't have that, uh, then we are going to run out of money. So I understand that, but success. If we think about success in a broader context of prosperity, that we think about what if it's prosperity being it's one part financial for sure, but it's one part relational, it's one part physical, it's one part emotional for that matter, and in a very broad context, it's one part spiritual or a bigger picture for whatever that looks like for you. But if you think about this as a prosperity as a wholeness, if we define that as being success, how would that change the way we look at our numbers? So I believe that the challenge with looking at this is to try is again to broaden our context to how would you measure. So if you got a great return on investment, let's just say you had a 3.5% return on investment at EBITDA at that line on your income statement. But let's just say that. But what if you had 20 letters on file from customers who had said, you guys were just so amazing, the way you handled me, the way you treated me, just came through, answered all my questions. You were so great. I referred two of my friends to you. How does that? Now that's going to translate into the business because it's going to be revenue, but we track it on only in that transactional side. We don't track how do we engage because the people that did the work to get those referrals were the staff, were the people. It wasn't the system. The
Yes.
system was part of it. How do we measure that? So I think sometimes it's about trying to how do we and I'm going to go ahead and just say something. I don't have the answers to that because every organization is unique and different and everyone's needs are unique and different. But I do believe that there is a process that we use called the Legendary Six, which allows us to broaden out what really are bottom line return elements in an organization.
Thank you. I know this is something you'll be covering in the mastermind, right? Correct? I mean, I know we
Yep.
talked about
Yep.
there are 40 sessions. You have to first be in the waiting list, then fill out an application. And then if you are selected, we'll only let 24 people. I think half of the spots are spoken for. If you're selected, the 40 sessions will be spread out throughout the year. You get summer off, Christmas off. I mean, some weeks in December off, and it's 1 hour sessions, and half of the 40 sessions are going to be educational. We have Michael and I and other experts would talk about marketing and leadership and conflict resolution and on and on and on, and including the topics he's alluded to today. And the other half, the other 20 sessions are what we call groupthink, where we come together as a group and we think as a group. We solve problems as a group. It's not like groupthink as in like we all, think the same way and, not challenge each other. It's as in like we think as a group. So you're going to have a lot of fun. I know some of you asking us to open up a second group. We haven't thought of that yet, but for now, if you're interested, still fill out the forms, especially, tell us you're interested by going to masterminds.aesthetics.com and joining the waiting list. So anyways, so Michael, I do have a question for you. The last question I have for you, this again is from one of our listeners. How can I balance the pressure to grow my practice while I maintain high quality? I think a lot of people who get into aesthetics are perfectionists. I'm not saying all are, but many are. Like they believe in doing the very best. I mean, not only for their patients, but even the way their practice looks, even the way they act, even the way they conduct themselves. How do I know this? Because I read Google reviews, and a lot of times the reviews are like glowing. I wish all businesses were like this. So how do I balance that pressure to grow my practice with maintaining high quality services?
That's a great question, and there's a couple of things that are really interesting. First of all, the pressure to grow that might be a little bit of a misnomer, but I mean, is it pressure or is it part of your strategic plan? If it's pressure, then it's emotional, and then that can put anxiety into play, and then that takes you away from being a great leader. But if it's part of the plan, well, and it's about, again, that strategic planning, if you will. So again, it's funny how I know I pick on words, but I find that we're a culture of words that we've just assumed that we think they're all good for us, and some of them aren't so good. So pressure is one of them. Anyway, how can I balance the pressure to grow with maintaining high quality services? Well, again, it's the I in there that bothers me a little bit. The question for me is that how do we cast a vision about what we're passionate about as it relates to high quality services, and how do we help our team embrace and engage that vision? And it is not me trying to maintain it. We just have a passion to do it. And it's often, this is where, when we think about defining, what do we mean by, what is our definition of high quality service? If you asked all the people that are interactive with that in your organization, just a simple question. So I'd like you to define what you think, what high quality services are. I guarantee you're going to get different answers. And if you do get different answers, then that tells me then there's inconsistency in the vision and there's inconsistency in the mission. It's about, sometimes we just have to go back to the sources. So why are we really here? Well, we're here about helping people feel better about themselves, to look better, to feel more confident. And we know that as part of that, we need to ensure that we have that excellence and high quality services is what we're known for. Okay, so what does that look like? And it goes back to not an owner trying to tell people this is what we do and this is how we do it, but engaging the team to own the process of what that looks like and actually empower it. That doesn't necessarily make it that the problem goes away. It costs money to have high quality services. I understand that, but this is where it gets interesting, because now what we're doing is integrating. Well, we know this is the quality services, but for us to do that, we have to increase our rates by 28%, or we have to add these services, we have to do that. And suddenly the team is looking at that in a fashion, well, we could do that if we did this or change. Suddenly now all of this need for excellence, the pressure's gone because it's a collective effort. Everybody's working for it. There's still, as the owner, you're still you still sign the checks. You're still the last person standing. I get that, and that's part of the burden we carry as leaders, as influential leaders. But it comes back to, if I was going to distill it down to a simple thing, to answer that question is another question. How have you intentionally engaged your team in the process of defining what are your core values, and how are they empowered in what they do and how they do it?
Thank you so much, Michael. I as always, I learn a lot from you, and I'm really looking forward to this mastermind, because I think it's 25 years of wisdom, and of course, the other amazing entrepreneurs, other amazing practice owners who run amazing practices, all coming together and creating a group where together everyone is better off, right? Because they end up spending time with really successful people from around the country who all are learning, growing, supporting each other. So thank you for that. As I bring this to a close, Michael, what final thoughts do you have for our listeners?
Well, I want to give you a little word picture. I want you to think about, if you think about Western Canada, there's a lot of big rivers, and of course in winter we have ice and snow, and in the spring that river, one of the big rivers, the Red River, breaks up, and the ice the big chunks of ice start to move down the river, and as it moves down the river, it encounters a bridge, and as it hits the bridge, it starts to back up, and at that point we look at the situation. We have ice jamming up against the bridge. We know two things are going to happen: either the bridge is going to collapse and it's all going down the river, or the bridge is going to hold and the water is all going out and flooding the surrounding the neighbors. And the question I love to ask is, so what do we need to do? Somebody said, well, get rid of the ice. Well, I said, yeah, that makes sense. Of course you do. He says, but how would you do that? Well, I don't know. There's so much. I know there's a lot, eh? So, well, what if we went around to the other side of the bridge where now there's not a lot of water coming through? And if we looked at all those pieces of ice, do you think there's one in there? Think of some of those games we play. Do you think is there one piece of ice, if we pull that piece out, others will follow? No, yeah. Well, now suddenly it's not a big pile of ice. It's strategically removing ice one piece at a time and letting the others follow. Last time I talked about the difference between momentum and acceleration. This is a journey of mastering yourself, mastering your leadership, but also being passionate about who you are and why you matter.
Thank you so much, Mike. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. I also want to take a minute to thank our listeners. Again, I hope, like the last episode, we'll put a link to that. Success Stories in Aesthetics. This is the second episode. We'll put the one to episode number 1. You love this episode as well. And, send in some questions, write some reviews for us, talk about it in the Business of Aesthetics Facebook group. So hopefully you can all brainstorm and learn together. And of course, if you are interested in joining this mastermind group, like I said, we only have like half the spots still left. Fill out that waiting list and fill out the application, and we'll see you on the other side. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful week ahead. Bye for now.
Thank you for joining us this week on the Business of Aesthetics podcast series, brought to you by our gold sponsors, MRP, Laser Uptech, and Equa Marketing, and silver sponsors, Lengia Law, Eilis Works, and Pronox. Would you like to join our growing group of aesthetic industry experts and get featured on the Business of Aesthetics podcast? Or do you know someone who would love to share their strategies for growth in the aesthetics business, providing quality patient care or their clinical expertise? Head on over to www.businessofaesthetics.org/podcast-show and apply to be featured as a guest on the show. Remember to subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Amazon Music, or wherever you listen. If you would like to engage with today's or any of our past speakers, join our Facebook group or LinkedIn group by searching for Business of Aesthetics. Thank you and have a great day.